Good morning, everyone. I'm Pierpaolo Casamassima, a third-year MEDTEC school student. I'll start by saying that I'm very honored and grateful for the unique opportunity to speak to you all, and I'd immediately like to thank all those at Humanities that considered me for this role. Thank you. About a month ago, I put on a white coat for the first time during the third-year Humanities University white coat ceremony. Along with my fellow medical school and MEDTEC school students, I also recited the World Medical Association Declaration of Geneva in front of some of our professors. No, we haven't become doctors yet. There are still years of intense studies ahead of us. But what we had last month was yet another inspiring occasion in which to ask ourselves a fundamental question about our future career. Why are we working so hard for that white coat? Why is our main life purpose to help others? I solemnly pledge to dedicate my life to the service of humanity. This is what we recited. The health and well-being of my patients will be my first consideration. I will share with you my personal answer, what I believe to be the major driving force of my passion, and it is one word: empathy. When we look into the eyes of a fellow human being, we suddenly and unconsciously establish a connection that indeed runs between all of us. Empathy is our intrinsic ability to step into someone else's inner world and experience it as if it was our own, which stems from the fact that we recognize our own experiences in other people's. Empathy can treat us to moments of utter joy. For instance, I can imagine as a future doctor that I may have to tell one of my patients really good news about their recovery after a long and tough illness. I would experience an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. I've been able to change someone else's life for the better. I've reached my ultimate goal in my job. But on the contrary, empathy also involves experiencing negative or unwanted feelings, which may seem inconvenient at first. Consider the case of a chronic disease against which there is no known effective treatment. I can picture myself having to give up on one of my patients, on their struggles, their will to survive, their dear ones. Well, the reason I'm telling you this is because I strongly believe that it is exactly this feeling of discomfort which makes a difference in the field of medicine. Because we suffer when others suffer, and because we must help when others need help, we actively feel the need to give all we have at our disposal to improve or even save someone else's life. The countless healthcare workers that have been working incredibly long shifts since the beginning of the ongoing pandemic are an outstanding example of this. Luckily, I was given food for thought on the contribution of empathy to our field here in Humanities during the first-year course named Professionalism and Bioethics. I even decided to write a whole essay on the topic as my final assignment for the course. And I can tell you, there's loads of scientific research confirming how much of a game changer empathy is in healthcare. Now I'm going to go a bit personal and tell you that all these emotions I've described to you related to empathy were responsible for quite a mess in my life a few years ago. In fact, if I hadn't dared to embrace these instinctive feelings, I wouldn't even be here talking to you. Since the age of 6, my whole life had been revolving around classical music and my instrument, the violin. At 17, I graduated from the conservatoire in Italy, and before the end of my last year in high school, I had been accepted at one of the best music institutions in the world, the Royal College of Music in London. Since I was a child, I was completely devoted to a future career as a classical musician, but during my 2 years of studies in London, a deep life crisis escalated. I figured more and more clearly that what I had been working hard for during the last 15 years wasn't making me feel complete. When one of the people dearest to me died, I decided that I would devote my life to her. And it was after those years in London that I realized that the best way to do so was to help others. I made the mad choice to leave the Royal College of Music, take a year off, and prepare to enter medical school. The world of science was very new to me at the time, and I was on my own. But I didn't give up for one day and started self-studying on my iPad. When I was admitted to medical school, I had a roller coaster of emotions that are hard to describe. This was exactly what I was looking for, a curriculum that combines the clinical aspect of medical training with an experimental approach to healthcare based on the use of the state-of-the-art technology. You see, even before I knew of MEDTEC school, I would always stress the fact that, in addition to clinical practice in the office or the hospital, I wished to actively engage in research. I wanted to try and contribute to the advancement of the available instruments and therapeutic approaches in medicine. We often talk about innovation in the medical practice, that is, in hospitals and labs, where the impact of the technological revolution has been huge. But what about what comes before that? What about medical education? MEDTEC School is doing just that, and I'm happy to be part of one of the first attempts in the world at bringing innovation to medical education. So far, MEDTEC School has been extremely stimulating. We're studying interesting subjects, and what's especially important is that we continuously get involved in first-hand experiences, like when we had the chance to try performing a surgical exercise on the latest Da Vinci surgical robot. The task was to ligate a vessel after isolating it from the surrounding adipose tissue. This semester, I'm especially loving the course named Biocompatibility and Biomaterials. We explore the microscopic and macroscopic properties of all major classes of materials to find those that are best suited for application in medical devices and implants. During lectures, our professors bring real prostheses for us to touch and analyze. A few days ago, we put our hands on a sample of a hip bone prosthesis made of titanium alloy that reproduced spongy bone on the inside using a lattice structure. Last but not least, some of my classmates signed their very own first scientific publication on the Journal of Personalized Medicine, after some days in which we performed in class a genome-wide association study on possible contributing polymorphisms to severe COVID-19. I won't lie to you, MEDTEC School has also proved very tough at times, especially in the transition every semester from the engineering environment in Politecnico di Milano to the medical one at Humanitas University. Sometimes I stop reading textbooks for a second and ask myself what I'm doing this for. And the answer is always the same. Whether I'm trying to examine the circuits at the heart of a biomedical instrument or the biomechanics of the forearm, I never forget that my driving force is not in the equations that I've learned, but in my emotions. MEDTEC School was born with the intention to make medicine more humane, which to many sounded like a paradox. How can robots and computers make medicine more humane? I believe that we can use technology to destroy those barriers that interfere between the physician's job and their patients, so that a more natural and direct connection can take place. We can use machines so that we have more time to listen to our patients, as well as make sure that they don't hear the words chronic or terminal anymore. In conclusion, yes, I am confident that empathy and technology can coexist together in healthcare, and I wish to be the proof of that in the years to come. Many people have been wondering how in the world scientists could come up with a jab less than a year after the identification of the COVID-19 pathogen. Researchers over the world empathize with the terrible suffering of the people who had to fight in the first phase of the pandemic, when hospitals were overflowing with cases and no effective medical protocol had been defined. Just like we sat in front of a screen in fear whilst in isolation, and we put ourselves in the shoes of all those people who lost their loved ones and could not even say goodbye to them one last time, so did the researchers, yet they realized that they were in a position to take charge and revolutionize the course of the pandemic. Their contribution was the result of countless hours, days and weeks of work, and besides the amount, it required great intuition and mental resilience. Those that we call heroes are, in my eyes, exceptionally sensitive people who decide to devote a big part of their daily life to work to reduce other people's suffering. Dr. Katalin Karikó is a great example of this. She's an example of the courage it takes to leave a mark despite all the obstacles our life throws at us. I'm done talking now, but before I go, I'd like to thank Humanitas for the opportunity I've been given to study here. I thank Dolce & Gabbana for their scholarship. I also want to thank my classmates for the support they give me every day, and my professors and MEDTEC School directors for their hard work with a completely new course. This is the most beautiful, intense, and emotional job in the world, and I can't wait to start. Thank you.